Hi! It's been about a month since I strung these two rackets in episode 1 of the Sergetti Stringing Technology. In that episode, I shared some background information about this unique stringing method and my initial tension readings. And if you haven't watched episode 1, make sure to check that out before watching this video. Now that you're caught up to speed with this Sergetti stringing technology, let's get into it. Alright, so here's a quick recap of episode 1, and this is the readings that I shared with you in that video. In this first column here, I have my racket, the Prince Phantom 100P, and my string setup. There's both polyester strings, Prince Tour XP17 in the mains and Vortex 18 in the crosses. And I use 3 tension devices here to measure the strings. The standard stringing method here at 38 pounds. This is the time that it took me to string it, and the Sergetti Stringing Technology took me about 5.5 minutes longer. So let's take a look at Jim's racket and similarities in the readings. So starting off with his racket, he's using the Volco Evo V1 102 head size. He has kind of a unique string setup. He's using the Ashway Monogut ZX Pro 17, which is a Zyx string, and the Volco V Icon Natural Gut 17 in the crosses, and his tension is 38. So both of us use a pretty low tension on our rackets, so that was kind of a good comparison, even though it's a different racket and different string setup. I took a little bit longer again to string up his racket. And so let's take a look at the similarities in the readings, and I have these highlighted here. So in this first reading here under the string meter, I highlighted this and this because it was similar in the sense that the Sergetti stringing technology measured a little bit lower in terms of the average of the strings. So this is the left side of the racket and the right side of the racket when you compare it to the standard stringing method, and the same here. So that was similar in both of our rackets. In this next column with the ERT 300, it's measuring dynamic tension, and again I highlighted it because in both of our rackets you'll see that the DT is higher than the standard stringing method. So this one's 1 unit higher, and in my racket it was 2 units higher. Then finally with the Babolat RDC taking the string bed deflection, mine was higher again at 43 compared to the 39, and here was 43 compared to the 41. So those are the readings. This is before we even had a chance to hit with the racket. So let's take a look at what we thought about the rackets on our initial playtest. You'll notice in this portion of the playtest, I did mine earlier with the ball machine, and then when I met up with Jim, we did some live ball hitting. We did the same skills test though. So I'll start off with the deep ground strokes, and I was aiming for that back portion of the backcourt area. And between the two, and the way I could tell is one was labeled with a green and the other one had a black label, so I would switch back and forth. Between the two, I felt that the Sergetti had easy depth and it was more comfortable. So whenever I had to aim my balls deep into the backcourt area, the Sergetti had the edge. All right, so we just did our play test, and thanks again, Jim, for coming out.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so that was fun. I usually do these skill tests, as you know, by myself on the ball machine, but we got to actually hit some.
A human ball machine today.
Yeah, so that was great. I have 2 of his rackets that I spoke about earlier, and I had Jim, he doesn't know which one is which is done with the conventional and the Sergetti. One racket actually has a natural gut and the other one has a colored yellow gut. So maybe we should talk, and we'll talk about each skills challenge.
Okay.
So we did, maybe you should talk about your arm.
Well, one of the things I'm always looking for are things to protect my golfer's elbow. Hard to believe, playing all this tennis and I get golfer's elbow. So looking for anything I can do with a racket or strings to try and protect my elbow so I can keep playing.
Yeah, and I want to thank Jim for not using his dampener today. He normally does have one, but I asked him, can you do it without, so we could just get the real feel of the string. So he'll probably put it on.
I'll put it back on later,
after
yes.
this play test. All right, so the first skills test was the ground strokes for depth and power. So which one did you start off with first? Was it the...
I believe I started off with the yellow gut, and it seemed to have a little more precision and depth for me on the ground strokes. So it felt a little bit better to me as I was hitting ground strokes.
All right, so you gave the edge to
The edge went to this one on the ground strokes.
yellow one, okay. The next skills test was the angle ground strokes, where I was trying to hit a double shot into the alley out wide. So I wasn't going for depth, but more for angle. Between the two, I felt like both of these felt about the same. I couldn't really tell the difference. And so it was a toss-up on that particular shot. The next thing we did on the ground strokes was the angle touch.
The angle volleys.
Yeah.
And they were pretty
the
close.
Angled ground strokes.
Angled ground strokes, yeah.
Yeah.
And they were pretty close on that. Again, I think the yellow gut gave me a little more touch, a little more precision, maybe a foot closer to my target than the natural one did.
The next shot I was practicing was the deep volleys, and this would be typically hit from the service line where you're transitioning and making your way up to net and trying to hit a deep volley. So whenever I had to go for depth, again, it was the Sergetti that had the edge. I just felt like I didn't have to put as much effort into hitting that ball deep into the backcourt area of the court. So I'll have to give the edge to Sergetti on the deep volleys. And we're looking at the depth and power on the volleys. So
they were pretty close in that. Unfortunately, strings and the way you string it doesn't improve your footwork. So I think it was more operator error. Both rackets felt pretty good on that. I couldn't tell much of a difference.
Okay. When I started to work on the angle volleys, I was trying to drop it in short, shallow. I'll have to give the edge to the conventional stringing because I felt like I had better feel. Maybe it's just more what I'm used to, but I had better results when I had to hit that sharp short angle with underspin. And then we did the angle volleys, which was the drop shot, which is one of your specialties, so that was interesting.
Well, I'm not as good as you are, but I do the best I can. On that, I think it was this racket, the yellow one, that gave me a little better precision on those.
And you mentioned something about when you had to reach out wide, or was it low?
When I was able to reach, the racket was pretty stable. So on a shot that may have been maybe not as on center, I was able to hold a steady racket and the ball went back in play without any real shock or torque to it. So that was a really nice feeling.
Oh, okay. Then finally on my serves, when I switched back and forth, I was trying to angle the ball out wide on the deuce court with a slice and out wide with a kick serve on the ad court. I really wanted to feel the difference between the two, but I'm gonna have to say it's a toss-up between the two in terms of spin and accuracy. And then finally we did a serving skills challenge where we had to hit out wide, and Jim typically doesn't hit a slice or a
I don't hit
topspin
many
serve.
wide to the, don't tell anybody, but I don't hit a lot of wide balls to the deuce court. And in that case, they were pretty similar in their precision, so both of them felt fairly good. The natural one may have had a minor edge in getting a little more pop on the ball.
Okay. So so after today, I'm going to hand these rackets back to Jim. So
Great.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Albert, for the chance to do this test with you.
I'll be tracking your tension after a week and see you after a month and do another tracking and also get your feedback on how it went through the month. And you're allowed to use the dampener. That's fine.
Okay, good.
So
thanks.
yeah, thanks again.
Appreciate it.
Before I get into the week 1 readings, I did want to mention something that I forgot to mention on day 1, and that was before Jim and I hit with the rackets. So the readings I got with the string meter was lower on the Sergetti Stringing Technology compared to the standard stringing method on my racket. And the same was true for Jim's racket here. But what was kind of interesting was the ERT 300 and the Babolat RDC readings were both higher if you're comparing the Sergetti to the standard. So you can see that the 29 compared to the 28 and the 43 to the 41 on my racket, the 43 to 39 and the 29 to 27. So when I was hitting with the racket, I knew which one was the Sergetti and which one was the standard. So when I was doing the playtest, when I mentioned how I felt like the depth shots when I was going for more depth on the ground strokes and volleys, the string bed did feel softer or lower. It felt looser actually on the Sergetti, but yet it was higher in the DT and the string bed deflection. And Jim doesn't know yet, but the racket that he picked with the yellow strings, the yellow gut strings, was also the Sergetti, and I'll tell him at the end. It'll be interesting to see how Jim feels about the racket after the next 3 weeks when we meet up again and do the final interview. But the same was true for him. He did feel like the Sergetti was more comfortable. It was a little bit more forgiving. He even mentioned that he hit a ball off center and it actually went over the net. So we'll see. All right, so now let's look at the week 1 readings, which is in blue type. I highlighted every single one because I felt like nothing really stood out. So I just wanted to point out that one of the things that the Sergetti Stringing Technology claims is that it has a better tension maintenance. So that's one of the things I wanted to track. And after week 1, you can see there's not a significant difference. I mean, in my racket, you can see that there's a 1% better tension maintenance with the Sergetti. The string bed deflection, though, it came out exactly the same. And on Jim's racket, on the ERT 300 dynamic tension reading, it came out the same here. But on the string bed deflection, it came out a little bit higher on the Sergetti Stringing Technology. So we're going to play with the rackets for another 3 weeks. I'll meet up with Jim, and we'll see what the final readings and the final interview will be like. All right, so after a month, we decided, Jim and I will do a final play test together. And luckily we got invited by our friend Andy. And we're out here at a nice resort. And it happens to be our favorite court.
My favorite court in the entire world. There's no place I've ever played where if you hit a wide ball, it goes in the ocean.
Yeah, take a look at that view right there. Yeah, so maybe you can guess in the comments below where the court is. All right, so we're gonna start with Jim, and again, he doesn't know what racket is which, so we'll do a quick recap on his rackets first. So he had 2 rackets that I strung. One had a natural gut color, so that's the only way he could identify this racket from this other one that had a yellow colored natural gut. So on the initial play test, Jim had mentioned that he liked the depth and the control on the ground strokes. He even felt like the angle ground strokes were more precise. When he got to volleys, it was kind of a toss-up, but when you were reaching for some volleys, you mentioned how it could somehow get the ball over.
A little more stable on the off-center hits, yes.
On the yellow one.
Yes.
And then when it came to touch volleys, I think you said it was a toss-up.
Pretty much a toss-up there.
That, yeah. And then on serves, it was a natural gut that actually shined in terms of power. But I'll go ahead and let Jim talk about his 1-month journey after that.
Well, after a month, there's no way you can get a bad string job from Albert's. So they both felt great. But I found that the one with the yellow strings gave me just a little more cushion, a little more feel, a little less jar on some of the off-center hits. So given the choice, I would have him string it like the yellow racket again, still not knowing which one was the variable string tension.
Okay, well, here's the reveal.
Drum roll.
Okay. The yellow one is actually the Sergetti stringing method. So Jim had no knowledge, and every time he told me about it, I had a smile inside my...
But he never let it know me.
Yeah.
So the yellow one, the one that felt a little bit better, was the variable string tension.
Yeah.
Well, guess what you're doing next time you string my racket?
I guess we're gonna have to go that route. On my rackets, of course I knew I tried not to pay attention to which racket I was picking up. Maybe I'm not as sensitive as Jim, but initially I did feel the difference between the Sergetti and the conventional. The Sergetti felt like it was easy depth. That's one thing, and it was a little bit more comfortable. So that was something I could tell. As far as feel, I felt like the conventional one was actually better on feel. And then when it came to serves, it was a toss-up. So we have different string setups. We both have arm issues.
Yes, both have the
both string at low tension.
I have the golfer's elbow. You've got the tennis elbow.
Pickleball elbow.
Pickleball.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I don't like to say tennis on video.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So yeah, there you have it. I mean, Jim likes the Sergetti, and there's something to it in terms of Jim's liking. So, but here's another thing. So remember I said I couldn't tell a difference. So I decided, we played a couple of sets here with Kaipo and Andy. I decided to string another racket with the Sergetti last night, and to see if maybe I could, I don't know, maybe play a match with it. I never did really play sets with it. And unfortunately, well, fortunately for Jim and Kaipo, they won. So his Sergetti won, he beat my Sergetti. So,
well, thank you, Albert, for the chance to do this with you.
Yeah, I want to thank you again for a fun play test. All right, so here's the final chart for the 1 month readings. We're going to pay attention to the green type. And I did take another string meter reading. I was just curious to find out if the string bed was doing anything odd, but nothing really significant to share there. There was some tension loss though there. The ERT 300 and the Babolat RDC is what we're going to focus on in terms of tension maintenance. And so you want a lower number, and you can see that the Sergetti on my racket did hold tension better. It only had a 17% tension dynamic tension loss. And the reason why I didn't have the number of pounds is that the ERT 300 only goes on to 26. So I had nothing to share in terms of the actual pounds in the conversion of the dynamic tension to pounds. So let's take a look at the string bed deflection, and it came out dead even here at 26%. So, and again, I was the one that felt like there wasn't a difference between the two rackets after the first couple hits. Now, as far as Jim's feedback on it, he always felt that Sergetti had a softer string bed or was more comfortable, but in the end, you can see that it's both at 24. But the standard stringing method had less tension loss because it started off at a lower DT, and the string bed deflection also supported that here. So it was interesting, especially for Jim, that he throughout the playtest that he felt more comfortable with the Sergetti, and even though it did even out. And on my string comparison, I couldn't tell the difference, but there actually was a difference. So there you have it. I mean, everybody's going to feel what they feel, and this is what Jim and I experienced in our journey. Here's something I wanted to share with you that I was impressed by. I just ordered a tension sheet for one of my clients, and immediately after I entered the payment information, I received an email from the company. I was so impressed by how quickly I received the tension sheet. I reached out to Serge and asked him if this is typically what happens. So here is Serge's reply. Yes, the tension sheets are always generated instantly after the payment. It is all automated with a very complex programming that gathers all the parameters from big database as soon as you select the racket brand, model, the main string, and the cross string, brand, model, and the tension. He went on to mention that the database contains over 1,600 precise racket model parameters and over 1,500 string model parameters, plus all the programming of the formulas to calculate the perfect tension for each string for any combination of strings. Well, now I can see why it took him 12 years to develop that. So let's examine what the Sergetti Stringing Technology claims to offer and what Jim and I experienced in this playtest. Number 1, more than 5 times bigger sweet spot. Well, it is true that the sweet spot did feel bigger. I'm not sure about 5 times bigger, but it definitely was a more forgiving feel. Number 2, 3 times more stability and power on off-center hits. Well, Jim did mention that on his reaching for a volley that he actually hit a ball over that he didn't expect to, that normally wouldn't go over, and felt pretty stable. I tried to hit off center to see if I could get that same result, but I was never successful in being able to do that, so I couldn't speak on that one. Number 3, optimal precision, reach your target more often. Well, again, this is an area that Jim spoke about, that he felt more precise when he was trying for his angle shots. I, on the other hand, did not feel the same. I felt like the conventional stringing method provided me more connection to the ball. I guess maybe it's just, again, it's a personal thing. So for me, I just didn't feel as connected. Number 4, minimum torsion, shock, and vibration at impact. Well, Jim did play without his dampener for that playtest, and he did feel like it was definitely more, less shock, and it was comfortable. I felt the same too. I don't use a vibration dampener, so I definitely did feel that. Number 5, minimum risk of injury. Well, if you're going to get less vibration and less shock, then I can see that you would have less injury, so that makes sense. Number 6, offers maximum performance and comfort. Well, we already talked about comfort, and that's something we felt right from the beginning. In terms of maximum performance, if it's referring to tension maintenance, that wasn't confirmed, at least in my testing in this playtest. And number 7, optimize durability of your string. Now, both of our strings did not break during the playtest, so we can't confirm either way if it did help with the optimizing the durability of your string. If you'd like to try the Sergetti Stringing Technology on your next racket, use my promo code AMStringing15 and get a 15% discount when you purchase your personalized tension sheet. And if you happen to be one of my clients watching this video, I'll be happy to order you a tension sheet for your next stringing with the same discount. Thanks for watching.
Happy stringing!
And let your strings play.